Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I, agree out here to tell you a story. Oh, the last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 shows. Like all the others, there's kind of a shamanic stream of consciousness about all different kinds of things. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the world has been pretty squirrely. Oh, let's say since 1947. But how many of you remember that? How about 90s when Herbert Walker Bush, was president, and we're talking about trillion points of light, right? And then he had that little war in Iraq, and he basically didn't do anything but take the first and second armies to the Kurdish corner, right where one of the more interesting archaeological sites in the last 600 years was, and the French and the Germans had it all sewed up. And they were unearthing a thing called the mirror, the window, through time and space. Right? And we had been playing with that for a long time, right? So let's hear what one of my mentors had to say about that.
There, reproduced in all of their glory and right before the world's eyes, is an ancient talisman diagram. It's based on the history and cult of Isis, Osiris, and Horus, including the magical utilities meant to generate the deity's return. The primeval concept, especially that of sacred domes facing obelisks, this is something that was designed in antiquity for the express purpose of regeneration, resurrection, and apotheosis, for deity incarnation from the underworld to the earth's surface through union of respective figures. The dome, the ancient structural representation of the womb of Isis, and the obelisk, the ancient representation of the erect male phallus of Osiris. That layout, as modeled in antiquity, exists today on the grandest scale at the heart of the capital of the most important government, most powerful government on earth, the United States, as well as in the heart of the most politically influential church on earth, the Vatican. Now, given this fact and the pattern provided by the Apostle Paul and the Apocalypse of John, the book of Revelation, that the end times would culminate in a marriage between political, that is Antichrist, and religious, that is false prophet, authorities at the return of Osiris Apollo, it really does behoove open-minded researchers to carefully consider these prophecies in stone, as it defines the spiritual energy that's knowingly or unknowingly being invoked at both locations with potential ramifications for the year 2025 and beyond.
Folks over 50 who struggle to drive at night.
I feel like a bad son, right? I've been talking about this for the last 5 years, talking about the big splat, talking about how, the Vatican, the city of London, and D.C., Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, are three entities that are politically, spiritually, economically separate from the countries that they reside in, right? D.C. is supposed to be the capital of our government, but no, we have the best politicians money can buy. They're all blackmailed. They're all owned. They don't represent you. Go back and watch all of George Carlin's HBO specials, back from the 80s. he was talking about this, way before David Icke was talking about any of this, and David, is kind of very speaks to specific things, but anyway, it's another here nor there. This guy talking, his name is, what is his name? What is coming in 2025? That's the YouTube, right? And Sid Roth, I guess.
This is how my dad used to see the world.
The U.S. Capitol has been called the Mirror Vatican due to the strikingly similar layout and design of its primary buildings and streets. Now, that's no accident. In fact, America's forefathers first named the capital city Rome. But the parallelism between Washington and the Vatican is most clearly illustrated by the Capitol building and dome facing the obelisk known as the Washington Monument, and at St. Peter's Square Basilica in the Vatican by a similar dome facing a familiar obelisk, both of which were, according to their own official records, fashioned after the Roman Pantheon, the circular domed rotunda dedicated to all pagan gods. Now, this layout, a domed temple facing an obelisk, is an ancient alchemical blueprint that holds significant esoteric meaning. For those who may not know, the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. is historically based on a pagan Masonic temple theme. Thomas Jefferson, who shepherded the anti-Christian Roman Pantheon design, wrote to the Capitol's architect Benjamin Latrobe, defining it as, quote, the first temple dedicated to embellishing with Athenian taste the course of a nation looking far beyond the range of Athenian destinies, end quote. The Athenian Empire was, of course, first known as Ossyria, the kingdom of Osiris. In 1833, Massachusetts Representative Rufus Coyote agreed, writing, quote, we have built no national temples but the Capitol, end quote. Now, to understand what these statements may soon mean for the future of the world, one needs to comprehend how these apparati, the dome and the obelisk facing it, facilitate important archaic and modern protocols for invigorating prophetic supernatural alchemy. In ancient times, the obelisk represented the god Osiris's missing male organ, which Isis was not able to find after her husband brother was slain and chopped into 14 pieces by his evil brother Set. The story involves a detailed account of the envious brother and 72, that's an important number, conspirators tricking Osiris into climbing inside of a box, which Set quickly locked and threw into the Nile. Osiris drowned, and his body floated down the Nile River where it snagged on the limbs of a tamarisk tree. In Byblos, Isis recovered his body from the riverbank and took it into her care, but in her absence, Seth stole the body again, and this time chopped it into 14 pieces, which he threw back into the Nile. Isis searched the riverbank until she recovered every piece except for the genitals, which had been swallowed by a fish. Isis recombined the 13 pieces of Osiris' corpse and replaced the missing organ with a magic facsimile, an obelisk, which she used to impregnate herself during the very first raising of Osiris ceremony, in which she called forth the seed of the dead god from the underworld up through the magic device, thus giving rise to Osiris again in the person of his son, Horus. Now, this legendary ritual for reincarnating Osiris formed the core of Egyptian cosmology, as well as the Rosicrucian Masonic dying and rising myths, and was fantastically venerated on the most imposing scale throughout all of Egypt by towering obelisks representing the phallus of Osiris and domes representing the pregnant belly of Isis, including at Karnak, where the upright obelisks were vitalized or stimulated from the energy of the masturbatory sun god Ra shining down upon them. In Egypt, where rituals were performed to actually raise the spirit of Osiris into the reigning pharaoh, political authority in the form of divine kingship or theocratic statesmanship was established, later reflected in the political and religious doctrine of royal and political legitimacy, or the divine right of kings, who supposedly derived their right to rule from the will of God, with the exception, in some countries, that the king is subject to the church and to the pope. But this meant, among other things, that the Egyptian pharaoh enjoyed extraordinary authority as the son of the sun god.
And the sun, and God gave us his most beloved son, right? And the sun, pretty much we didn't have a son, we'd freeze to death pretty quick. All I'm saying is things are way more complicated than you think. And conversely, way simpler. Because all you have to do is to be a slave to love's co-creation, your better self, the intent of being your best, right? Not trying, the intent to being your best, right? So how y'all doing, right? How's that splitting your cable, right? And if you read your Bible, whatever this guy says kind of touches on a lot of things in the Bible. Right? So, good luck with that. Here we go.
Little did I know that I was going to be drafted in this program when I was 16 years old. And it was during my Christmas break between the age of 16 and 17 years old, 17 in February. I was taken from my room. I was then taken to Carswell Air Force Base. I was then transported to the moon, where I sat and signed a bunch of papers that were non-disclosures, were just a big stack of papers signing my life away when I wasn't even 17 years old yet. The Lunar Operations Command is a moon base, and it was built out originally by the Germans in the late 1930s, early 1940s. While they were building this complex, they had utilized an ancient alien building that was not too terribly far away. They had found a bunch of these buildings on the moon, and they had found one of the buildings that they were able to patch up with some of the concrete they made from the local regolith. They then were able to pressurize it and use it as a base of operations while they built out the Lunar Operation Command. After a number of years, and after Operation Paperclip, it served its purpose and integrated the Nazis into the military-industrial complex, the LOC was handed over to the Americans. When approaching the moon from Earth in an electrogravitic craft, you will find the moon be at a distance, and then it will grow very quickly in front of you. And then the next thing you know, you are above the surface. You will then fly in the electrogravitic craft at breakneck speeds, except you don't feel inertia. You find yourself hugging maybe 90 feet, 300 feet above the lunar surface, going at incredible speeds until you reach a crater. And then you find yourself orbiting a crater. The person piloting the craft radios in, requesting permission to land. You don't see anywhere to land. All of a sudden, a little haze kind of occurs, and then there's a base. It's the Lunar Operation Command. And as you fly down and over, there is a control tower where they control the air traffic. As you fly around this base to make your final approach, you see a secondary crater. And as you fly down into that crater, it's fairly deep, and you end up popping out into a lava tube section where you immediately see a giant building built into the middle of that lava tube that blocks it. And it's built kind of like the shape of a bell. And it looks like the outside of a battleship almost, the way it's built. You then fly in and land in the bay, and you're now at the Lunar Operation Command.
Well, some of the testimony that's come to me over the last year in particular has been nothing short of startling in terms of the degree to which the space program, the secret space program, has expanded. I've talked to people who have said that there is and has been an ongoing extrasolar planetary colonization program that's been going on for decades and decades. I mean, to the point where one of the people who had actually gone, and this was the claim that he made, that he was on a warp-capable spacecraft that went from here to the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy in 20 minutes, and that when they got there, they've located at least 8 Earth-like planets in some of the star systems along the edge of the galaxy. And 8 of those planets had human life on them. They were Earth-sized planets with sun-like stars similar to our sun, at approximately the same distances. They wound up using some kind of radio telemetry sensors to determine which ones were broadcasting in conventional radio and television signals. They found 2 planets like that, 2 of which were speaking English. And the minute I heard this, I thought, well, this is complete baloney, or this system, this whole program has been going on for a lot longer than anybody would have dreamed. But he described seeing cities and roads and cars and people and conventional clothing speaking English. And there's only one way that that's possible, other than parallel universe type of scenario, and that is that the program's been going on for much, much longer.
Right after about the 6-year mark in my 20 and back experience, I found out some very disturbing details that no one on the ship knew about. And, well, almost no one. I was approached by a petty officer Wheeler, someone who I honestly had a crush on, and she used that to her advantage. She needed me and an engineer to help her get into a room, a restricted room, and look into some pods. She wanted to know what was in those pods. She had a bad feeling. Well, we helped her get in, and I was standing watch. She and the engineer opened up one of the pods, and they were cryogenic chambers, and they were full of people that had basically looked like they'd been filleted and cleaned and sent to the market. While I saw this a little bit from a distance, some gas was escaping from this pod, and it overcame the petty officer and the engineer, and they collapsed. And as I was turning to run through the door I was watching through, I collapsed. After I came to in the sick bay, they had explained that the 2 others had died in the accident, and that I was being held for debriefing. I was then debriefed, told not to repeat the information to anyone else. If I wasn't a valuable intuitive empath, my fate would have been much different. So they sent me back to my regular duties and told me that from time to time I was going to be called to work on a different deck on a different project. And this project was basically a galactic slave trade.
Galactic slave
It turned
trade.
out that for many decades, while we were developing technology to try to fight some of the negative ATs, there were extraterrestrials that were coming into our solar system, were coming to our planet, would swoop down and kidnap people and leave, and then take them and trade them off into some sort of galactic slave trade that's going on. After a while, the benevolent powers that be decided, you know what, this is a commodity. If we start calling our own people and trading them off to these extraterrestrials, we can get trinkets, we can get technology, we can get biologicals, and that's what happened. They would trade human beings for biological samples, much like what Henry Smith would end up receiving in his lab and doing different experiments on. And they would also get technology, and they would trade the humans off. The humans would go off to be used in any number of ways. Humans are very coveted. People aren't only leaving to be food for reptilians. That's a small percentage. Most of them are being used for their skills. Humans are very well known for our engineering, our creativity, our ability to bring things from our mind and create them, engineer them. And strangely enough, we're coveted and used in that fashion. So the Cabal group has been basically utilizing human beings as a resource. So as little groups of people from all of these different programs started to join and work very quietly and secretly to not only find out the full truth of what was going on, but find a way to combat it. The SSP Alliance is a very small fraction of the overall secret space program or secret space programs, under 1%. So the only technology that they have is what they brought with them when they defected. It is a ragtag group that is doing their best to bring full disclosure to humanity. They don't want a protracted disclosure. They want all of these technologies given to all of humanity at once, not to any one group, any one country, to everyone at once. And that is what the Secret Space Program Alliance has been working for.
The collective story that these insiders have shared with me is much bigger than where the UFO community had been going up until then, and thus it has utterly revolutionized the whole basic discussion of what everyone is now talking about. Whether they agree with it or not, everyone has had to deal with the concept of the secret space program.
According to some estimates, we can now track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
On September 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11, then Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld testified in front of congressmen about $2.3 trillion missing from the Pentagon. In 2015, an Inspector General report came out detailing that number grew from $2.3 trillion to $6.5 trillion missing from the Pentagon. This money is going into unacknowledged projects both above our heads and below ground, into deep underground military bases and secret space programs with technology far beyond what many of us can even realize.
Our black budget, for instance, garners $1.023 trillion every 2 years. It's over $500 billion a year. Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one has an average cost of $17 to $19 billion. Each one is built in the site. It used to be it'd take a year to 2 years to build each one, and now they're capable of building a couple of them a year with sophisticated methods.
And we can't afford houses.
Area 51 is only one base. One of the
We can't
131
afford
bases.
education for children.
Of these 131 bases, I call Area 51 a mega base. It's got more than one base in it. It's Tonopah Test Range, Area 51, S2, S4, Groom Lake, and a host of others.
These are all dumps. deep underground military bases. Right?
Silent. I remembered the line from Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
So what do you think, huh? Any response? What are you gonna do about it, homie? Drink some more beer?
When the Trinity nuclear test was done and Robert Oppenheimer said, "We have done this before," he was speaking from an informed perspective. In the ancient Hindu text, the Bhagavad Gita, there is a reference to a bolt of iron charged with the light of 1,000 suns. It describes radiation sickness. It describes elephants screaming and dying. It describes the shadows that are left on the ground after the blast goes off. All things that we're now very familiar with in the nuclear age.
All things I saw.
The same culture that described what appeared to be the use of a modern nuclear weapon also was describing things like anti-gravity craft that flew through the air with no sound called Vimanas. These craft could pass right through a mountain, and they also used some sort of particle beam weapons. You have human-looking beings that are larger than the rest of us and have blue skin, like Krishna, and they also have extraordinary abilities. And in addition to that, you have weird reptilian beings called Rakshasas, who are also codenamed snakes. And these beings clearly appear to be of a reptilian nature. This even goes to the point that you still to this day have temples in India in which there are people called Nagas who have a human-like top, but then from the waist down, they literally have a snake's body. All of this stuff takes on a much different investigative hue once we look at the fact that the actual record of what we now know a nuclear bomb looks and acts like is dutifully recorded in these Hindu scriptures. So Oppenheimer was aware that this weapon unleashed a fury unlike anything we'd ever seen before. Prior to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the scientists were the rock stars. Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, Marconi, Tesla. These were the rock stars. These were the people who made our lives so exciting that we went from essentially a primitive situation where in order to have food preserved, we have to have an ice box where literally pieces of ice are covered with sawdust, to now we have electric refrigerators. We have electric lights so we can read at night. We have thoughts being beamed wirelessly by radio, and then eventually even pictures through television. This was so exciting. People could travel transcontinental railroad. All these things were coming out that had never happened before. Private automobile without the need for horses. And then all of a sudden, the nuclear explosion shows that technology hit a screaming brick wall. We could not trust any longer that our toys would be the instruments of our enlightenment. They could actually be the instruments of our destruction.
Exploding these nuclear weapons ended up basically acting as beacons to a number of ET races in our general area. The primary energy pulse that occurs in one of these explosions sends an energy that feeds back through the fabric of space-time. All stars, all planets are connected through electromagnetic filaments. Scientists call these connections the cosmic web. It looks like a giant spider web all throughout the cosmos. When a nuclear explosion occurs, it sends a feedback through this cosmic web. This is a problem because these extraterrestrials not only communicate through this cosmic web, but they actually travel through it from star to star. Therefore, when we detonated these devices, we sent out a signal saying not only are we at a certain level of advancement, but we're not at a certain level of advancement spiritually.
Oppenheimer's key quotes revealed that he did not know what the effect of the detonation of the nuclear bomb would be. When they conducted the Trinity test, they were unaware as to whether or not this explosion would create a chain reaction that could actually destroy the whole Earth. And yet they proceeded forward because they believed that this weapon was the only way they could end World War II, and thus the ends justified the means.
With how potent and how powerful these technologies can be, we can never expect to be able to handle them if we operate them from a low consciousness. When you raise your individual consciousness, when you actually make the effort to become more aware of an individual, that has a mirrored effect to society.
Nuclear
It's a law of
explosions
correspondence, as above,
in
so
Europe,
below. So when
in
you become
Brussels,
more conscious of an
in the
individual,
Vatican,
that makes society
London,
itself raise in
in
consciousness.
Washington.
And when each one of us, every single one of us, begins making ourselves more aware, society itself is going to become more aware.
Multiple insiders with credible military and corporate backgrounds have said that extraterrestrial spacecraft have appeared over nuclear missile installations and have completely powered them down.
First, like to briefly describe the incident that I experienced in March 1967. At that time, I was a first lieutenant, U.S. Air Force, stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. I was trained and assigned duties as a missile launch officer for the Minuteman I intercontinental ballistic missile. We had operational control over 10 Minuteman nuclear missiles. On the evening of March 24, 1967, while my commander was on a scheduled rest break, I received the first of two phone calls. The first call was to report unidentified lighted objects flying above the facility.
Well, they were hovering to attack the nuclear silos. All they did was shut down. Captain Robert Salas had like 8 nuclear-tipped ICBMs, and they all got shut down in rapid succession. And these systems have triple redundancy backup systems. So, and the guards up topside were with their weapons drawn with a glowing red saucer above the silo. And then the UFO then 60 miles to the other base and shut down their nuclear missiles as well. This has happened more than once. It's happened in Brentwaters in the UK as well.
What most people haven't heard came to me from two insiders, Bob Dean and Pete Peterson, where both of them independently told me that in the year 1990, all of the nuclear warheads in the US and in the USSR completely melted down, became radioactively inert, and even the missiles themselves would just sputter around and wouldn't even fly a straight trajectory anymore. Right during the same time that all of these nuclear missiles were literally melted down inside the warhead, we also have this amazing formation appear on a dry lake bed in Oregon.
The Idaho National Guard has a huge mystery on its hands, and that is our top story today. During routine photo reconnaissance missions over Oregon, RF-4 jets spotted and took photographs of a huge carving in the desert over 1,000 feet across.
It has everybody talking. I mean, this is just something that, well, it chills you.
Having somebody do this, it's incredibly time-consuming. A lot of expertise involved. Had to take a long period of time, maybe a lot of money.
From point to point is exactly 11.5 degrees. Exactly. And the outer ones, they're exactly 23 degrees apart. Exactly.
No variation.
No variation.
And there's something else puzzling here, something that you do not see. You do not see tire tracks, the kind of tracks that might be made by a tractor or a plow. No tire tracks and no footprints. In Oregon, I'm Walden Kirsch for NBC News.
The reality is that this is the same type of thing that's being done with crop circle formation on an even more impressive scale, and that mark was a symbolic statement from ETs. The mandala, remember, is supposed to be a symbol of the cosmic mind, a symbol of the creator. the origin of the universe, the geometric nature of how everything unfolds. So they're giving us a message. They're showing us that they will make sure that we stay on track for this positive future that's been promised to us in over 35 different ancient cultures around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
If I lost it all and I had to start from scratch, here's what I'd do to get back to 6 figures a year in 4 steps. So step 1, I'd go on Amazon and search for book topics that are making good money and have less than 20 reviews.
With our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
What's he talking about, Larry?
So when I really think about the speech from Dwight David Eisenhower, his farewell speech about the military-industrial complex, it brings up a lot of stuff for me. I was recruited to go off-planet in 2006, and it seems to be related to the alternative 3 scenario that relates to creating colonies off-planet, and the Mars colony was the planet that was being discussed during that time. And so when we hear about a warning like that, but we don't hear about the actual alternatives or agendas or ET government treaties and some of the things that were taking place, what was he really trying to say? There's so many layers to the military-industrial complex that we're starting to discover now. And I've been definitely researching and digging real deep in order to understand really what he meant. And as many have uncovered and been a whistleblower for, and just my own experience in that Mars recruitment, we discover a secret space program, this multi-level shadow government with compartmentalism, things that happened after the Second World War, and the infiltration coming in from Project Paperclip to the American government, MKUltra having so many branches. So it's like, okay, here's a warning about the misplaced power that exists and will persist if we as an American people don't start to become empowered, which is basically what I got from it. I could feel a lot of pride in a lot of my family members about that speech. But I would say that I'm a family member that has, I think, recognized some layers that were not brought to my attention growing up, that I've been able to sort of share with them.
So, how many people do you know who understand this? How many people do you know kind of feel it in their gut? The average person who would be hearing this would say, oh, this is tomfoolery. Doesn't exist. Can't believe it.
Share with them. And again, there's compartmentalism. The NSA signed something in 1947 that made it legal, like a law, that you couldn't disclose this sort of stuff without massive ramifications. And here we are in this particular window, without oaths being signed by many of us, with more freedom of speech and more of an ability to bring light to all of this. And that's why the speech is really relevant, because it rings true to today. Those warnings are something that we're beginning to finally uncover.
Actually started back in 1955 with the Eisenhower administration that was forced into treaty, somewhat of a surrender with a Nazi faction that had been operating. One of the witnesses that was General Brigadier Brigadier General Stephen Lumpkin, who was on Eisenhower's staff, who was aware that he lost control to the corporations and that it would not be in the best of hands. And so once this treaty was signed, Nelson Rockefeller restructured the whole CIA MJ-12 operations. So now our legal government is no longer in the loop. They also replaced the complete MJ-12 group that was originally set up by President Truman with Allen Dulles as MJ-1, or head of the MJ-12 operations, of all people, who was highly instrumental in the Nazi infiltration. What happened was,
Operation Paperclip.
when this happened, all of the reverse engineering operations that were Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio were moved to Area 51 and S4, where Eisenhower realized that he had lost control when he attempted to look into it. He was denied access. Five-star general was really pissed, so he threatened to invade Area 51, where the First Army out of Colorado, and until they allowed two agents to give a report of what's going on over there. And what they found was that several craft were being reverse engineered that were extraterrestrial and German origin.
One of the ways that the Nazis obtained their advanced technology before World War II was through the use of a channeler called Maria Orsic. Maria Orsic was channeling telepathic messages from extraterrestrials that were offering her plans and schematics to actually create anti-gravity craft. Maria Orsic channeled this information for the Occult Vril Society in Germany. This information was later used by these German secret societies to build out many of their crafts. Because they were focused more on the qualitative superiority rather than the quantitative, they were more focused on having more advanced technology rather than more tanks and boots on the ground. They were losing the ground war in Europe, but they were obtaining the more advanced technology. And to save that technology, they took it down to Antarctica pre and during World War II.
In the late 1930s, the Nazis had an expeditionary group go down to Antarctica, and they found some very interesting things. They found a region under the ice that was created by geothermal heat from volcanoes, and there would be 3 miles of ice, and a few thousand feet above ground level would have been melted by the geothermal heat. And the rest of the ice acts as an insulator, causing it sort of like an igloo effect. And the dome would grow from the heat, the geothermal heat, and it would melt and run under the ice. And that was some of what was lubricating the ice and causing it to move. But underneath these areas, they were finding perfect areas to build submarine bases. So not only did the Nazis build out submarine bases, as they developed more and more of their space program, they developed out a massive spaceport. After these spaceports were developed and the Nazis had handed it over to basically the Americans began to develop more and more research and development bases in Antarctica. In the late 1950s, a treaty was signed that stated that Antarctica was only to be used for peaceful research. Well, we were basically arriving and digging giant holes under the ice in various areas and building out these giant complexes, much like I think it was called Project Iceworm back in the 1960s, where like in Greenland, the United States Army Corps of Engineers was building out an ICBM base hidden under the ice. And it was investigated. I'm told that they were very similar when they were built and how they were built to buildings that were built in this program. Companies that were given access to these R&D bases began to develop NBC testing testing, they called it, nuclear, biological, chemical testing, which in the programs usually translates into them working with clones, working with different chemical compounds to affect how people develop psychologically or physiologically. So a lot of very, very dark scientific programs began to be developed down in Antarctica and indeed are going on to this very day. One of the biggest things that the cabal does not want us to know about are the existence of these R&D bases and all of the horrible crimes against humanity that are occurring on these R&D bases.
On December 9th, 2015, William Tompkins released his epic book, Selected by Extraterrestrials. I became aware of it early in 2016, but it wasn't until he had conducted several interviews that he and I became friends and began speaking regularly. The story of William Tompkins is quite amazing. Here's a man who's 93 years old, and he gets hired right as he begins his military career in the Navy, working in a highly classified program for the United States government at the highest levels, where he was personally responsible for getting information from 23 different American spies who were embedded in the German secret space program, which apparently included bases in Antarctica.
A single Navy operative went into Germany. This is like 1939. He didn't believe this, but there was very strange organizations and different research groups all over, not just Germany, but in the occupied countries too. And strangely enough, Germany was putting in production fantastic vehicles. They didn't have wings on these aircraft. They didn't have empennage or tail. They had landing gears. Some of them were triangular shaped. Some were rectangular shaped. Some were round shaped like a saucer. And so he, being a spy for the Navy, found out all of these fantastic situations that were going on inside of Germany. And this is an important point.
Before World War II.
Instead of him going to his boss, coming back to the United States, he went directly to the Secretary of the Navy, Forrestal. Forrestal gets tapped on the shoulder. He gets told, don't select a Navy officer to head up these operatives. What? He's told to select somebody who had never been in Annapolis. Now, almost every Navy officer, whether they're a one-star or lieutenant commander, they've all been through Annapolis to learn how to be a Navy officer. It turns out Forrestal is told that every book in the libraries, every book in the colleges, every book in the universities, every book on this planet is misinformation.
Propaganda.
It's misinformation. So, which is initiated by the Draco reptilians as far back as 6,000 years ago.
The reptilians really came into control and started to be able to manipulate what was going on the face of the planet about 6,000 to 7,000 years ago. It is true that they have different masking technologies to be able to be in a room and look like a human, but usually they're in underground bases in various places on the globe, as well as in a huge area in Antarctica. The southeast region has a large number of underground caverns that are kept extremely warm, too warm for humans, by geothermal heat. It's a perfect place for all of these colonies that the reptilians have. They're basically cities, huge cities with millions of them.
So,
Ready to eat it.
Secretary of the Navy selects Rick Obata. He's not even an American. He comes over here with his family. He goes to school here. He goes to the second year in high school. He leaves school. He joins the Navy as a third-class seaman, works his way up in the Navy. Now he's a commander, okay? That commander is selected by the Secretary of the Navy to head up all of these operatives
In
to
Nazi
go
Germany.
back into Germany and find out what's going on. Because that individual had never had misinformation given to him about every technical field on the planet.
Everything we learn in the establishment-controlled education systems is specifically designed to program our minds away from the truth. Physics is wrong. Medicine is wrong. History is wrong. Everything we are taught in textbooks is mainly wrong. And this is done purposefully so we don't understand how to move our bodies, how to feed our bodies, what really happened in the past, what technology can really do these days. All of these things, if we learn them, would help us empower ourselves, would help us actually understand what's really going on with our reality.
Now, if you were to go to San Diego and look over at North Island, you're going to see a tall building like this. There's a small office in the top of that building, which is a secret office for the Admiral. This is where the operatives come to. So the Admiral's aide comes to my barracks, me on the shoulder, and he only says one word: he's here. We drive over to that building, we get up to the top, we go into this conference room, a small room. Admiral Rick Obata sits here, I sit here, and one of three other bosses that I have are all captains. So now I have three captains as bosses, and now a 2-star admiral. He just got another raise. Wow. He just came back from Lockheed. He just came back from Scripps Institute. He just came back from all the aircraft company. Wow. Now he's got these operatives coming in. So the operative sits on the other side of the table. He discloses to us these fantastic things that Germany is doing that make no sense. Now I have 8 girls and 3 PhDs as a group. We put together a package from what the operative brings back. Some of it is photographs. Once in a while, it's a manual, hardly any manual. A couple of manuals were not even in English, German, or any other language. They were extraterrestrial hieroglyphics. You see all of this stuff. You hear it. You understand what the Germans are doing. They didn't just get documents from the extraterrestrials. They got brand spanking new space vehicles. Here's one. Here's another one. Here's. They brought these. They take you inside. They show you how to drive it. So they put me in a secret laboratory, which is designing not flying wings like Northrop does, okay? These are just a fuselage with no wings and no tail. Half airplane, half spaceships. This is what Northrop is designing. Our first spaceships are U.S. Navy attack class submarines. We put together programs that went all the way out into the galaxy, not just this galaxy.
The military military industrial complex, back when they were testing a lot of the technology that they had received from the Nazis after World War II, as well as from ETs. When they were doing proof of concept testing, they had attached this technology to a regular submarine, and then they flew it out of our atmosphere. That was the first time that they were really able to fly a vessel out of our atmosphere using electrogravitic technology. The reason that they used a submarine was, of course, because they were self-enclosed. The crews that served on them were used to serving 6 months or more away from home, having all of their supplies with them. And they had the psychology of being able to handle orders for such a long time. The technology developed to a point to where they developed the finances, this financial schemes, to begin to build out fleets of these long cigar-shaped craft. Some of them were kilometer long or longer, and they could make them longer by putting in sections. And the sections were modular, just like in modern submarines. They could take apart the fuselage and pull out sections. It could, one of these modules could be set for like 3 or 4 months.
So if you go to my channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and you go to what I've been watching, I don't know if it's called videos or what do they call it? In my thing, it's called library. So maybe go to that, because videos in my thing is my videos. Go to my channel, your channel. Yes, there it is. Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Owl Bob, SENSIE, Owl, OWLBOB. Right? And so then I hit, let's see. So if I hit library, it shows all the stuff I've been watching, right? And then my videos, I hit my videos, and it shows my videos, right? So, and I normally get how many? I guess somewhere between 34 and 40 views after a while, because people watch this stuff later, right? 39, 39, 39, 43, 14, 16, 21, 39, 42, 20, 40, and I get between 0 and 8 likes. Right? So why don't you guys get more people subscribed? Why don't you get some more people? Right now, no one's watching, right? And it's 58 minutes and 14 seconds. I got about 20 minutes left. Battery. So as you can see, things are not what you think they are. Right? I don't believe a word I say. These shows are just for entertainment, right? I'm just a storyteller, right? And so are those other people, right? And so it's, do some homework. I mean, YouTube, it's great. All this stuff is on YouTube. It's right there. And you see, NASA, the Defense Department, and the CIA are all having their own little investigative groups of SAP, right? What is that? Or US, UAP, unidentified something phenomena, aerial phenomena, but it happens all over the place, on the ground, under the water, so. Have any of you guys seen anything? I've seen a lot. I mean, that's pretty much from a small age, from 4. If you want my manuscripts, give me a buzz at the dudeawake42@gmail. What would be really nice is somebody have $12 in my bank account, and I got nothing in it until the beginning of next month. So it would be nice. I checked out everybody. No, that's all you're getting. So it'd be interesting to see what you're doing. But I got a ton of videos. Like this is a good one. Good evening, good day, good morning, wherever you are. I hope this is your Sensei Al Bob coming to you on your channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. This is one of our shorties. I'm out in the middle of the woods. I have very little bandwidth. So I just want to make a few comments about what's going on. Remember, don't believe a word I'm saying. So we're seeing right in front of us the picture. No longer is it even, jokingly, obfuscated by the illusion. It's straight up. Donald Trump is, one of the blessings of Donald Trump is that he is showing us exactly what we got, We get the religion, what date is politics, the world we deserve. And if we're not involved, 3 years ago, we're not coming from the space of love's creation, well, we're going to get the illusion. But it's, World War II definitely showed us what the illusion can bring us. And Donald Trump is manifested by the hidden hand. The hidden hand, a transnational entity based on 3 legs. That's why we had the Trilateral Commission. Go look at, and he gave us Jimmy Carter. He gave us Bill Clinton. He gave us Barack Obama. And in between we got the neocons, right? And they're all the same thing. They all represent this fascist corporate state. That's a transnational oligarchy. It's not coming from any one country. It's not the Russians, And it's just, and Donald Trump, fake news, straight up. It's always been fake news, since they learned to put, mud and, make papyrus scrolls, So it's all written down. It's all, a done deal. Shakespeare said, we're just actors on a stage, pawns in a game. But we do have this thing called the free will. And we can step up and be love's co-creation, Love's co-creation, which is all there is, the grand creator, basically wanted, it first had Hegemony, run by Lucifer, where it was all one nice codified, book and everything was great. But, Love's co-creation got a little bored, kind of wanted some skin in the game, instead of just these pawns, we were enameled to have a free will so we could choose to love God, we could choose, or not, and that's the little game that we're playing out right now. Lucifer got really pissed off as a petulant little child, and got so mad we had the Big Bang, and bingo, we went from having a totality to a linear universe, right? And that's all an illusion. Our whole universe is an illusion, right? So all we have to do is love each other, to be empathetic, to be understanding, to be, generous, right? Graceful, and that's all we got to do. Really, that's all we have to step up to, right? And what we're looking at right now is, Pompeo et al. Are these, Christians, and they're not even Christians, as Gandhi said, oh, I love Jesus, I just wish his followers would be like him, and, Buddha, same way, and, Vishnu, and, the Hebrew nation. I mean, all these expressions of religious understanding, when it comes from the heart, it's great, but otherwise it's a business plan. Christianity, which is an outgrowth of the Roman Empire. And we went from, Republic to the Empire to the Holy Roman Empire, right? And right now we have these three legs. We have the Vatican City, which is, has total autonomy from Italian politics, the City of London, total autonomy from, England, from, whatever their political structure is. And, Washington, D.C., go read the Act of 1879, I think it was, where they started the District of Columbia. And those three, the Vatican City runs the spiritual nature of the Hegelian Empire. The City of London does the banking, and D.C., through the Pentagon, does the warring. And that's all the United States is today. Whatever we export is, an element of war. And people go, oh, the government, Ronald Reagan started it all off saying, government is the biggest problem. Well, come on, the government can't do anything. Well, It's 391,434 square feet. Enough space. Thank you very much, everyone. We've all been through a lot together, and probably deserve that hand for all of us. Folks, don't you realize this is just a situation event leading a coup d'etat? Don't you realize that? And we have limited room. Our ex-pinhead was put in power. He wasn't voted in, but so has every president since Eisenhower, since George Washington. Number of years. We had the witch hunt. It started. Oh, the witch hunt. The day we came down the elevator, myself and our future First Lady who's with us right now. Yeah. First illegal alien lady. And it never really stopped. We've been going through this now for over 3 years. It was evil. It was corrupt. It was dirty cops. It's true. What he's saying is true. Everything on both sides is everything he's saying is true. They are owned by the corporate state. He worked for GE as the apprentice. He was the apprentice. But I can tell you at a minimum, you have to focus on this because it can get away very quickly, no matter who you are. Oh, it can get away pretty quickly. It was a disgrace. Oh, right now, he's doing the same thing, right? He's getting $1 billion of free advertisement. He's going to be the Republican candidate, right? And then Cam ain't going to be vice president. Michelle Obama will be vice president with JoJo, right? And he will, pretty much, how could he not win, right? So he's going to win, and Michelle is going to be the one on the campaign trail, right? And Barack will kind of be, the dutiful husband in the background. Won't be saying much, right? Except, isn't she great? Isn't she great, right? And basically, JoJo and Michelle will get voted in, and then JoJo will then trip over another sandbag, and he will fly off the stage. And he'll be giving a speech at the Grand Canyon, right? And he'll walk up there on the stage, There'll be a sandbag. He'll trip on it right off the edge. Ah! And the Grand Canyon is coming. Ah! Michelle Obama becomes president. Amazing. Who's vice president? Barack. Ooh, baby. And that's when you're going to start to see what we're going to call the Handmaid's Tale's Civil War. And it's not going to be pretty. So that'll be, 2025. And somewhere in between now and then, we will have aliens showing up on the lawn of the UN. Right? And they'll be good looking too. I mean, really good looking. Go watch the 91 NBC show called V. That's where we're going to be going. And also go check out, Gene Roddenberry's Final Earth Conflict. Go watch that one. So, and we're all heading towards the weird science of Star Trek, the new one that they got out there, New World, Strange Worlds, right? And we've already been out there. We've been out there since the 1890s. There were a bunch of Nazis, doing the same kind of rural thing in the United States, out there in the West, right? When we were still mopping up after the Civil War and after the war with Mexico and the war with the Indians. And that's another interesting one. Oh, look at that. 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds. I love it when it happens. So, come on. There's 0 people here, right? Come on, get some people. Let's get some kind of response.
So this isn't something that's sort of down the list of things that concern the Lord. This is right out of the blocks in the New Testament. You're just slammed with the reality of false salvation, false hope, deception. This was a concern to our Lord. It was a concern all the way through his life and ministry, and it was picked up as well by the Apostle Paul. And it was a huge concern with the Apostle Paul that to speak about the essence of genuine conversion and genuine transformation. So the New Testament makes much of this reality.
Now we're going to...
Coming to you from the campus of East Tennessee State University, this is WETS HD1 and WETS FM, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Bible radio station in college
There was the Stop the Roof Depot demolition, where the indigenous dominant neighborhood of East Phillips occupied Al-Qaeda site that was supposed to be demolished by the city. They stopped the demolition, which would have put more toxins into the atmosphere, and they're trying to reclaim that site for not only the indigenous people who live in that community, but also for the non-indigenous people, to reclaim it as a site for farming, sustainable farming, agriculture, and sort of local businesses. There's also still the ongoing efforts to reclaim the Black Hills, and I think we're going to see some more action around that in the coming years. It's an outstanding land claim, and it's not going away anytime soon.
That's Nick Estes, and this is Alternative Radio. I'm David Barsamian. This edition of AR features Nick Estes, Wounded Knee to Standing Rock, Indigenous Resistance. In South Dakota in 1973, hundreds of Native American activists, led by members of the American Indian Movement, occupied the Pine Ridge Reservation village of Wounded Knee, which was also the site of a notorious massacre in 1890 in which federal troops killed 300 Lakota men, women, and children. The months-long action in 1973 helped galvanize the movement for indigenous rights, which continues today. As the great historian Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz says, U.S. policies involving indigenous peoples have consistently been designed to disadvantage the indigenous, locking them into suppressed social status and codifying dependence on the U.S. government. Despite a history of oppression and genocide and continued discrimination, Native Americans are organizing and resisting. A younger generation of indigenous activists offers the promise of not just survival, but for a resurgence of indigenous societies and a renaissance of traditional culture. To talk about indigenous resistance is Nick Estes. He's a citizen of the Lower Brule Sioux tribe. He's professor in the Department of American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota. He's co-founder of the Red Nation. His articles appear in The Intercept, Jacobin, and Indian Country Today. He's the author of Our History is the Future and co-author of Standing with Standing Rock. I talked with Nick Estes in early May at the University of Denver. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me again, David.
Well, it's the 50th anniversary of a historic event in Native America, the action at Wounded Knee. Talk about its significance, and does it resonate today at all with Native peoples?
Absolutely. In fact, this last February 27th, there was a 50th anniversary commemoration in which there was 3 days of powwows, dance competitions. There was an oral history project through the Warrior Women Project, documenting and really highlighting and foregrounding the role of American Indian women and their leadership within the Red Power movement. And so in many ways, it does resonate today because you have the children of the Red Power movement who are leading today's movement, whether it's the protests at Standing Rock, whether it's, Line 3, whether it's, the attempts to get back Black Hills or Hisapa.
Okay, so we're about to run out of juice here. I'm going to end the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Yesterday's show, let's see how much juice we got.
And a lot of kids who know what to do, And usually it's kids who don't feel entitled,
Where do you see these kids?
I told you, there's one I've mentored. There are 100 young people who have gotten a hold of me on the internet from watching my show, right? And they're between the ages of 16 and 25. And they have...
Problem with me mentoring folk, back in the day, when I mentored folk, it was like the people who mentored me. I was like in their life, right? So the kids that I mentored, my 128 godchildren, they lived with me. They worked for me. They were, I just grabbed them before they were going to do something stupid and end up either dead or in jail for 20 years. And I said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to work for me but Bobby's going to give me $12. Take this gun over to Jimmy. And I said, no, you're being set up. Cops are going to be waiting for you. You'll show up with that gun. They will take it from you. They will run it. They will see it had committed a number of crimes. You will be found guilty for all of them. You will spend 30 years in jail. Now, break the gun, throw it down the drain. And a storm drain. And then I said, you're going to work for me for $10 an hour as an electrician. This is when the people I had working for me, I paid them every day $10 an hour and had them basically, and that's when the minimum wage was $1.75. I was paying people $10, right? So if you put that today, paying $18, I'd be paying kids $38 today. So anyway, again, this show has shown you a lot of different things. I'd love to hear from you at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, right? That's my email, right? The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. So come on. Let's see you do something. Let's see you get a hold of me. Let's start a conversation. But the sad thing is, most people, their crew, and Grandpa this, oh, hey, we have some property. We have 1,000 acres. You probably could do this like this farmland. Anyway, so the on the average, not many people, maybe 3 to 8 people watch during the show. On the average, they watch for about 4 minutes, right? And then they go back and watch it as wallpaper, right? And then the next day when I go look, see how many people watch, it's somewhere between 12 and 30 people, right? And then within a month or so, I go back and see how many people watched, and it's between 30 and 60 people, right? And some shows I can get up to 200 people watch, over a long period, a year or so. But I suggest that you go and watch, go back to the beginning and start watching these shows, right? And I would suggest that you should, they're not blocked. You can put them on a medium, a thumb drive, a DVD, a CD-ROM, your hard drive, up in the cloud, wherever. But I wouldn't suggest something off, out of your hand, right? And Dragon used to do that for me. And then, John Boy broke our communications, and Dragon got upset and thought I besmirched him. But then he came back, and we fixed it up, and sometimes he's back. And that's the problem with mentors, my mentees, my adepts, right? Is that they really get a rush out of interacting with me, right? And it's like, whoa. And then they really see a bunch of things and become enlightened. And then they get depressed and they don't realize that it's a lifelong thing. This ain't a race. There is no finish line. It's every day. In every way, you take the piece of the earth and you make it stronger. And that's what my message has been on this show for the last 5 years. That's what it'll continue to be. I constantly throw all kinds of, spaghetti up on the wall, see what sticks. And I hope you enjoyed this show, because I gotta go.